At this time, I'm going to introduce the Premier so he can open up the town hall. Premier Ford, welcome. Please go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Eric, for that introduction. I want to thank my two all-star MPPs, Minister MacLeod and also MPP Jeremy Roberts. They're both doing an incredible job. They're one of the hardest working MPPs that I've ever met, and I can tell the folks on the line, you have great representation down at Queen's Park. I also want to start off with thanking each and every person for joining us tonight, and thanking you for the great job you've done throughout this pandemic, and the frontline healthcare workers, the PSWs, the emergency service folks, the grocery store clerks, the truck drivers, anyone that, was considered emergency services. They've put themselves out there and put their community and their patients and the community as a whole before themselves. And I consider that each and every one of them to be heroes, and they're truly heroes. I always say, folks, that I play the smallest part in this. It's the 14.5 million people that when we called out for help, when we first got hit with this pandemic and people stepped up, we had grandmothers in the basement sewing masks if they had a sewing machine. We had small businesses switching over to make PPE. We had automotive companies switching over their lines to start making face shields. And I'll never forget. It was a couple months back, and I'm sure quite a few remember this that are listening tonight on the call. That when President Trump cut us off from 3M and N95 masks, and I remember saying that day, never again will we rely on a foreign leader, a foreign country, to supply PPEs to Ontario or our country. And I'm so proud to say when we did call out for help, over 23,000 companies stepped up to the plate and went on the portal and just ramped up. And I get chills talking about it because it's just incredible how we all pulled together. And I am so proud to say we don't have to rely on another country, another leader ever again. We have companies making face masks, no matter if it's the N95s or if it's a surgical mask. We have millions of them coming off daily. We have over 20 companies that are manufacturing now face masks. We have dozens and dozens of companies making the face shields, and we have Canada Goose that stepped up and switched over their line from making those beautiful Canada Goose jackets. They're making all the surgical gowns. We have hand sanitizer companies now, and I remember the distillers switched over from distilling and started to produce hand sanitizer. So it's amazing, again, when everyone puts their political stripes to the side and works together, we're unstoppable. We're unstoppable as a province. We're unstoppable as a country. And I see that as well when it comes to the economy, getting the economy going, that we do approximately $390 billion a year with the United States alone. If we were a standalone country, we'd be the third largest trading partner in the world with the United States. And it's pretty well evenly split. I think they have $6 billion on us provincially. We have $9 billion on them federally. But in saying that, I always say we have the brightest people anywhere in the world, and I truly believe that, and especially in the Ottawa region. I've always said that with the technology companies there, the tech centers there. If you include the Ottawa region and Canada and Nepean, Carleton, and Ottawa itself, then you add in Toronto's Tech Center, Markham's Tech Center, and of course Kitchener-Waterloo. There is nothing that we can't produce right here in our province, but not only produce, but compete against the rest of the world. I always say my number one selling feature is when I go around the world, go around North America to ask companies to invest in Ontario and make their home base here in Ontario. My number one selling feature are the people that we have here, and then the young students coming out of some of the greatest universities and colleges anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. But if we switch our buying habits, if you look at the $390 billion that we do in two-way trade with the U.S., and by the way, we are the number one customer to the U.S., Canadians are. We buy more goods off the U.S. than Japan, China, and the U.K. combined. And that's why I got ticked off. They're supposed to be our closest allies, and I truly believe, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for our American friends south of the border. We need to stick together. And obviously, I guess the president took a different avenue, and I know a lot of Americans, and they didn't agree with the president as I didn't. But we're going to move forward, and how we can go back when they start putting tariffs on our aluminum, and I hear they may be doing it with the steel. We can do retaliatory tariffs. That's not a problem. But how each and every one of us can respond when we're going down the aisle and we're promoting that Ontario-made logo or proudly Canadian logo, and you see it on every single Frito-Lay chips, or the bags of chips. People, are everything being equal and the price being the same roughly, they're picking the proudly Canadian product. As far as I'm concerned, we have much better quality control than anywhere else in the world. We have better products. And the patriotism in this country, I've never, ever seen it running so high as it is right now. And if we just change our buying habits, 1 in every 10, so let's say 10%, that's close to $20 billion with a B, $20 billion. That's tens of thousands of jobs for your neighbors, your community, family members. And I know we can do it, and we will do it, because again, we're all in this together. We're all pulling in the same direction. And I've talked to a tremendous amount of retailers, no matter if it's the hardware retailers, Home Hardwares, Home Depot, Canadian Tire, or grocery retailers like Walmart and Loblaws and Metro and Sobeys. In Costco, I got to add in Costco, that I've requested, when possible, buy made in Canada products, and they're going to sell a lot quicker if they have that logo on it. I've also talked to all the large manufacturing companies here, and we're moving forward, and you're going to see more of those logos on the items that we buy in the store. And I just ask everyone, please, if you see that Ontario-made logo with a maple leaf or proudly Canadian logo, buy it. And we can support the same people that supported us through this pandemic. These companies, the food companies that were keeping groceries on our shelves, they were working around the clock trying to keep up with the demand. As they supported us, now it's our turn to support these local companies. And I can promise you, if we do that, we're going to see billions of dollars come back into this province. And I'm first to admit, if I could buy 100% Canadian, I'd be buying 100% Canadian. But the reality is, there's certain items that we can't buy, and I fully understand that. But if we can change the buying habits, 1 in 10 is going to make an absolutely massive difference. My friends, we've all been going through a real challenge over the last number of months, and they showed me this chart the other day. It was yesterday, and I looked at it, and they showed me all the regions in North America, large regions, large states. I guess the only comparator is Quebec in Canada, with a larger population than the other provinces. But I looked at the other 12 states. We are so far ahead of everyone with the lowest cases of COVID per 100,000. We're number one anywhere in North America. And I give all the credit to the people on the phone. I give all the credit to the 14.5 million people that banded together. And we're getting through this, but we can't take our eye off the ball for a second, not even for a second. And my friends, we're going to come back stronger than ever before. We're going to have the economy just absolutely on fire. And I'm going to go back a little bit here. When we first got elected, this province had lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs in short 18 months. 18 months later, we as a province, we as a people, and I never say to government, because government doesn't create jobs, they create the environment for companies to thrive and prosper and grow. And then when that happens, people will thrive and prosper and grow. But in a short 18 months, we created the environment for 307,000 new jobs. And I never forget calling the Prime Minister and saying, Prime Minister, we need more people. We're short 200, and this is just back in January and February, we're short 250,000 people, and we need more people. And I told them, I said, I don't care if they're skilled or unskilled. If they're unskilled, we'll train them, and if they're skilled, that's great. Then we'll find them a place, no matter if it's technology or construction or the trades. My friends, we're going to get back to that point. We're going to come back like lightning. And I have all the confidence in the world in every single resident that is right here on Ontario, because there's no better place anywhere to live. There's no other more desirable place to raise a family than right here in Ontario. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank, again, each and every one of you, especially the frontline workers out there going above and beyond. So thank you, and God bless you and your families. So, Eric, thank you for that. Now I'll pass it over to the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Eric and Jeremy. Premier, your hard work and dedication during this crisis has been inspiring. I'm grateful you are taking the time to join me in MPP Roberts to speak to and take questions from our constituents. I know you started the day here in Nepean at Algonquin, and I know that Jeremy Roberts wants to discuss a project that you're working on with him. And I'm grateful that you're ending the day here in Nepean after a whirlwind tour of Eastern Ontario. I know my constituents received a confusing letter earlier today from our federal member of parliament regarding some work done by our government. So I wanted to take the opportunity to share with them and you what we've done as a government here. This is my third telephone town hall during COVID-19. The first two I hosted were with Dr. Vera Etches, our Public Medical Officer of Health, and Dr. Andrew Faulkner, the President and CEO of the Queensway Carleton Hospital, where we were able to discuss the healthcare crisis. Tonight we have an opportunity to talk about the healthcare crisis, but also the road to recovery as we get Ontario back on track. That means the continuity of good governance. It also means continuing to support strong communities. As the local MPP for 5 terms here in Nepean, I was able to continue to support important local projects and programs that were shuttered during COVID-19, including about $4 million worth of investments. The Premier spoke about supporting local, and earlier this summer I was able to invest $1 million in marketing dollars for hyper-local support for our food, beverage, our local tourism and cultural attractions. In addition, we invested $1.3 million in local libraries like the Ruth E. Dickinson Library as well as Centennial Library, $27,000 into the Nepean Museum in Jeremy's riding, as well as $10,000 to support the Nepean Sports Hall of Fame. We've also invested over $587,000 in the Ontario Trillium Foundation for important programming. The Ontario Arts Council received invested $86,000, and through sports programming, our government's invested an additional $242,000 just to make sure that we were going to continue to support our local community. I know that in 18 months from now, the Ontario that we all view and support and love will be resilient. And in order to do that, we continue to make investments. I've been working with colleagues to build 2 new schools in our growing community, one in Half Moon Bay for the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, as well as a new Francophone public school off Strandherd in Barrhaven. As the province turns our attention to support long-term care, and I know Jeremy will have more to say on some of the projects he's working on, I continue to work with Briere Continuing Care to establish a long-term care facility in Barrhaven to best support our aging and ailing population. Recently, myself and the Premier announced an $83 million Resiliency Fund, and I brought that to the Barrhaven Legion so that we could work with the Trillium Foundation to support COVID recovery efforts with our not-for-profits. I have reached out to all our local legions, to our food cupboards, our community associations, and all of our places of worship to encourage an application before the September 2nd deadline. That said, if you have had challenges with your not-for-profit organization and are unable to meet that deadline, the Ontario government will be opening up an intake as well in December, and I know many of those organizations within our community will be taking advantage of that. Finally, I recognize that when we do come through this crisis, the Nepean that we love to live, work, and play in will need to have solid infrastructure. So I'll continue to work with the Ministry of Transportation for an interchange at Barnsdale and the 416 to get the kids to the two new schools, and obviously to connect the Briere Centre with those that require that level of support. Barrhaven now is well over 100,000 people. It's its own city unto itself, and so it's important that we maintain that critical infrastructure in a high-growth area. I'll continue to work with the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries and a Veterans Park to celebrate and thank our Cameron Highlanders in Bell's Corners. And we'll work on a performance art center in Barrhaven. And of course, I'm excited that we will be bringing a new film and television studio to Woodruff soon into the new year. We've gotten through this crisis together thanks to the inspiring actions of our frontline and essential workers. All of us doing our part to contain and limit the spread of COVID-19. And of course, because of the strong leadership of Premier Ford. My team and I remain committed on the front lines at the constituency office to serve you and our community. And as your MPP, I continue to advance your key initiatives that will support our high growth and urban community. I'd now like to turn it over to MPP Roberts.
Thanks so much, Minister MacLeod. Great to be co-hosting this with you tonight. I'd like to start by thanking Premier Ford for taking time today to visit Ottawa. We had him at Algonquin College in the riding, and also just thank you, Premier, for your steadfast leadership throughout the pandemic. I know I and many others have felt a great sense of calm being able to watch you every day come forward to the podium, give an update, state the facts, be transparent. It's been a truly remarkable demonstration of leadership, and has really helped us get through these trying times. I've spent a lot of time reflecting recently on my late mentor, Max Keeping, who's familiar to many people on the call. And of course, Max was somebody who was always there to rally the Ottawa community in a time of crisis. And whether it was when we were racked with a series of youth suicides or the Children's Hospital needed support, Max would rally government, he would rally businesses, he'd rally charities, individuals, and we'd come together as a community, as an Ottawa and Nepean community to tackle these great challenges. And I know Max is smiling down at Ottawa right now, because that's exactly what we've done throughout this pandemic and this COVID-19 period. As your local MPP for Ottawa West Nepean, I've really tried to focus on three key areas over the past couple of months. That's supporting our vulnerable populations, trying to support our local businesses, and lastly, trying to support our seniors as well. And so through that work, in terms of supporting seniors, we've been working with our long-term care facilities, which have been on the front line of this COVID battle, connecting with them on a regular basis, alongside our great Chief Medical Officer for Ottawa, Dr. Vera Etches. And it was wonderful. We also were able to partner with Gabriel's Pizza and deliver over 1,000 meals to frontline workers at long-term care facilities across the riding and across the city. Also, in terms of helping our vulnerable populations, I've also been working on the United Way of Ottawa's community response table. The provincial government, also working with our federal partners, was able to deploy $200 million at the onset of the pandemic to support our social services agencies who are responding to a variety of challenges, including food insecurity, support for our refugees, support for seniors who are dealing with isolation, a whole plethora of different issues. And this United Way table has acted as a conduit to bring together all the different charities and social services agencies across Ottawa on a weekly basis to tackle these challenges. And so it's been great to serve as the provincial representative on that table. We've also, of course, alongside our seniors and other vulnerable population, has been those with developmental disabilities. Through my role as parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Social Services, I've been conducting biweekly calls with our developmental services sector, so the folks who run group homes for folks with special needs, and we've been making sure that their feedback is fed back up to the minister and through him to cabinet to make sure little issues can be dealt with, like ensuring that the folks who work at those group homes had access to daycare in the same way that some of our frontline healthcare workers did. And it's been remarkable how quickly and nimbly government has responded to these feedback and these issues and managed to get solutions. Lastly, when it comes to businesses, I've been fortunate to sit on the Provincial Finance Committee as Vice Chair, and our committee has just wrapped up almost 200 hours of testimonies from small businesses right across the province, and we've been hearing ideas on how we can help kickstart the recovery, ideas like tax credits and incentives, ways we can best market Ontario and get people to shop local, consider staycations, ideas that help cut back on red tape, like allowing our restaurants to expand their patios out into streets and parking lots, different things like this. So that work has been really critical, and those 200 hours of testimonies have been fed continuously up from us on Finance Committee straight to our Minister of Finance, Rod Phillips, and also, of course, to the Premier as well, to make sure that we can take quick action on each of those. So we're going to continue, all of us at Queen's Park, to focus on these key areas. I remain at your disposal if any of you have ideas on any of those areas, issues, and we look forward to continuing to work with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Well, Jeremy and Lisa, thank you so much for those comments. And Eric, before we take some calls, which will just be a minute, we did have a great visit. And Jeremy, I know you're really promoting Algonquin College. What an amazing college, just incredible, especially for the trades, and really promoting that campus of care. And I'm a strong believer in campus care, having long-term care facilities connected, or at least a stone's throw away from a hospital. And as we know, Algonquin is producing some of the greatest nurses in the country. So that would be great to put right there and along. And I know, Minister, you were mentioning about the ramp, the 416 or the 416, I should say, in Barnsdale. And I know working hard with the Minister of Transportation, and I'll do everything I can to support you, along with the Barrhaven and Briere long-term care facilities. And I just want to address one thing that I just heard what the Minister said. Lisa, you mentioned some nasty notes going on your riding. I can tell you, and I'm sure I speak for quite a few people on this line, this is not the time to play politics. In my opinion, it's very, very irresponsible to do that. Myself and the Deputy Prime Minister have an incredible relationship, and we've been able to help the country get through this by collaboration. And Lisa, I can assure you of one thing. People do not want parties, and it doesn't matter if the Green, NDP, the Liberals, or the Conservatives. They don't want people fighting right now. They want people cooperating. So, again, I would just ignore that irresponsible letter, and let's move forward united. Because I always say, united we stand, divided we fall, and Ontario is united right now, and so is the country of Canada. We also made a quick stop at Leonardo DRS, and what a facility that is. We talk about technology coming out of the Ottawa region. My goodness, they're producing the black boxes there, and other contracts for the Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, and U.S. militaries. We have some of the brightest people I've ever seen. When I spoke to these folks, they're really advancing technology in aerospace as well. And then we stopped by. I'm sure that everyone knows this place, Stanley's Old Maple Lane Farm. What a great place that is too, and talk to the Earl, the owner over there, and what a fabulous place. I told them, Lisa and Jeremy, we got to go there and have a big Ford Fest one time, and talk to all the folks, and then we wrapped up in Brockville with an incredible announcement, a $500 million investment in Eastern Ontario for our correctional services folks that are going to be creating 500 more jobs, which is great. I love to hear that we're always creating jobs. But and then we stopped off at a company called CrossFit, and God knows I need a lot of fitness, but I stopped off there and said hello to the owners in Kempville. But Eric, if we could just take questions, and folks, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to stay on for a few questions. I have another virtual town hall very shortly, and you're in great hands with Lisa and Jeremy. So we're ready to take the questions there.
Perfect, Premier. We do have a live caller coming up, but quickly, we're going to do a survey question. Everyone joining us, you can indicate your response on your touchtone phone. We want to know, how do you think the government is doing managing COVID-19? If you approve, press 1. If you disapprove, press 2. And if you're unsure or undecided, press 3. So again, how do you think the government is doing managing COVID-19? If you approve, press 1. If you disapprove, press 2. And if you're unsure or undecided, press 3. We're going to go to our first live caller. It's Carol Ann, who's joining us, has a question for the Premier. Carol Ann, welcome.
Hi, Carol Ann.
Thank you. Hi, Premier. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you and thank you and your team for the great job you're doing under these extreme circumstances. Keep up the good work. I'm totally behind you.
Well, thank you, Carol Ann.
So my question is, as we enter into the fall, we know that there's going to be outbreaks, and we know that our kids are all going back to school, whether it be primary, secondary, or university.
Yes.
At what point will the province pull back due to the number of increased cases? We know Ottawa's numbers have been double digit and have been for several days. I know, I'm sure there's no formula for that, but I'm sure there are indicators that the province is looking at to ensure control. So what are those?
Well, it's a very good question, Carol Ann. And what I'll do is, first of all, break down today's numbers. We had 118 cases, and we've been fortunate over the last few weeks. The majority of the time it's under 100, and it creeps over 100 sometimes. But within those 118 cases, I asked them to break it down, and it's four big regions. We have Ottawa, we have Toronto, we have Peel region, and then we have Windsor that represented 89 cases out of 118, and large cities like Ottawa, and I think I could be wrong. I think Ottawa had 22 today. But if we put that into perspective, and Toronto, with 3 million, close to 3 million people, and Ottawa and the surrounding areas, probably over 1 million now. We're still doing extremely well. But Carol Ann, I always go to the golden rules. We have to make sure we're vigilant. We can never, ever take our eye off the ball, because this moves like greased lightning. And go back to the golden rule of face masks, social distancing, and washing your hands, sanitizing your hands. And if you look at our neighbors to the south, as I was saying earlier on, it's absolute night and day to do moving forward. And where's that magical number? If I had a crystal ball, I'd love to tell you where we're going to be in the flu season coming up in late September, October, and November. But what I can tell you, are we prepared as a province? we are 100 times better prepared than we were when this first hit. Not just us, I think the whole world. We're learning more and more about COVID, and I'm a strong believer in relying on health and science. It's absolutely critical, and I'm always up there saying I'm not the medical professional, but folks, I can tell you we have the brightest minds in the entire country, health minds around that table that give me advice, give the Minister of Health advice, and we follow the guidelines of the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, the top doctor, along with the other 34 regions, the Chief Medical Officers. Now, if we're looking at it, pegging a number, I can't give you an exact number, but if we ever jump back up to 200, I can assure you one thing, the Chief Medical Officer would act immediately. We would follow his instructions that we would have to look at the schools and depending where the outbreaks were. But again, I rely on the medical advice from our Chief Medical Officer. And I think, Caroline, I think it would be devastating to our economy if, God forbid, we get this second wave and we have to shut down the economy once again. In saying that, I will not hesitate for a second to shut down the schools, the colleges, the universities, to protect the health of our students.
Caroline.
Oh,
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, hopefully that gives you a little idea of kind of, I just don't like putting a number to it because back in June, we were as high as 400 cases. And now we're in good days, we're under 100 cases, but we have to be vigilant. But thank you so much, Caroline, for that question.
A reminder to everyone joining us that if you have a live question you would like to ask, you can press 3 on your phone's keypad, and someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. We're going to go now to Ahmed, who has a question for the Premier. Ahmed, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Ahmad Jawad calling from Barhaven.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Mr. Ford, thank you for conducting this virtual town hall.
Well, thank you.
My question is, what is the plan to secure vaccine or conduct our own research for a vaccine and not be dependent on any foreign company or entity or country?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. We have, I know Health Canada is working on vaccine. Ontario Health is, Ministry of Health. We have some individual pharmaceutical companies here in Ontario, as well as the large one out in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We have the largest research hospital, UHN, in Toronto, the largest in the entire country. And I know Dr. Smith over there, the CEO, and his team are working day and night to make sure that we come up with our own vaccine until, again, we don't have to rely on any foreign country. But day by day, we're moving forward. And I'm hearing some really, really good results. I wouldn't want to come out and say at this date because I'm not 100% sure. And I'm sure the scientists and the medical professionals aren't 100% sure the exact date. But we're all hoping. What I'm hearing, we'll have a vaccine. It's not just getting the vaccine; it's doing the trials and the testing by January. That's what I'm hearing. But don't hold me to that because, as you know, with this virus, it's very fluid and things change day by day on this pandemic. But that's what we're hoping for by January. We'll have the clinical trials complete.
Ahmed, thank you for that question. We're going to go directly to another question. This one is from Sarah, and it's a question for the Premier. Sarah, welcome. You're joining us live. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. All right. How are you?
Doing great, Sarah.
Now, before I even say anything, I just want to thank you so much for everything you're doing. When I just see the cooperation, it really is amazing.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And I just have I hope it would be okay. I have a couple questions, but my main question is the speed. Like, I'm not a teacher. I don't have kids. so I don't have anything really directly involved. But is it wise to be opening them? Is it too soon? I was reading an article about, how people keep comparing it to the Spanish flu, and they said even though it was really cold, they conducted classes like in the schoolyard because it was safer. Like, is there an alternate way that might be more children at home to their parents and their grandparents and whatever?
And that's what I say, Sarah. That's my big concern. Number one are our kids, but our kids are very, very resilient. And my fear, they come home, as you said, Sarah, and give it to old guys like myself, or God forbid, the grandparents. That's concerning. But I can reassure everyone on this line, including yourself, Sarah, that we are pulling out all the stops. Every stop we possibly can. We appointed Dr. Heyer to oversee the opening of the schools and the outbreak management, and he's one of the most respected doctors in the country. We've also spared no expense, and I've said this right from the beginning. No matter if it's the $309 million that we put in, or the help from, and this goes back to my conversation earlier about cooperation. Great conversation with the Prime Minister, and I want to thank him for stepping up and contributing $381 million. Plus, we have asked the school boards to release the reserves. I call it the rainy day fund, and there's never been more of a rainy day than over the last few months. That's another $500 million. But the areas that we're really focusing on are having public health nurses in the schools. We're hiring 625 more public health nurses to be in there monitoring the schools. We're putting $75 million to hire 1,300 additional cleaning services and cleaners, custodians. And we're also focusing on children with special needs, which is so important, that we're putting over $22.5 million towards kids with special needs. We're also putting $100 million to enhance existing school board reopening plans. That's including hiring custodians, hiring more teachers, the HVAC system, and connectivity too, for these folks that are living in rural areas that they can't go online, they don't have the broadband. I think that's absolutely critical. And then on top of that, $30 million extra dollars from the province to, again, make the classrooms a lot smaller. I could list off just the raft of all the different items that we're doing, but I can tell you we're investing more per student than any other jurisdiction in the entire country. We have the safest and the most cautious plans. We have more protocols and guidelines than any province in the country. And I asked my fellow premiers when I was on the line the other day, and I said, premiers, are you getting a lot of people anxious, and is there anxiety? And I said, because very frank, we're doing way more than each and every one of you. I'm pretty outspoken there, and we all have a phenomenal relationship. And they said we are seeing a little anxiety, but nothing compared to what you're seeing. But I understand that. I have 4 girls, and they're out of school now. It's just natural that the parents are anxious, and I fully understand, and that's the reason we have the option of the online classes, and it's going to be night and day compared to the summer, folks. It's going to be similar to a Zoom call. We're going to have the teachers there teaching the kids, so it's going to be a lot different and a lot more enhanced than what you saw throughout the summer. But Sarah, I fully understand your concerns, and I am not taking my eye off the ball for a minute. As I mentioned to our cabinet the other day, and I know Minister MacLeod remembers this, I said, I don't care what ministry you're in, the number one focus, all hands on deck when it comes to getting our kids back in class. And it's critical. But I'm confident we're going to get through this. I have the confidence for the teachers to step up like everyone else did. And we have some of the greatest teachers anywhere in the country, right here in Ontario. I support them, and I know they're going to do an incredible job, the same job as all the other frontline essential service folks have done. And I just have the confidence they're going to do everything they can to protect our children and protect the staff. And I had a great conversation with all the boards of education right across the province today, along with not just the directors and superintendents, but also the chairs of all the school boards. And it was a very constructive, very, very good conversation today.
Sarah, thank you very much for that question. Now, Premier, I know that you mentioned that you have another important engagement this evening that you need to attend to. However, we will keep the town hall going here with Minister Lisa MacLeod and MPP Jeremy Roberts answering questions from the people of Nepean and the Ottawa area. But Premier, is there anything else you want to add this evening?
Well, Eric, again, I just want to go back to thanking everyone. I am so grateful, and I've never been so proud to be the premier of the greatest province in our country, the greatest region in the world, to raise a family, have a job, and live here. We have the best people anywhere, the best 14.5 billion people anyone could ask for. And again, I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. And we're going to get through this together, and we're going to come out stronger than ever before. My friends, thank you for coming on tonight. And again, God bless you and your families.
Thank you, Premier. Now we're going to do a quick survey question, and then we're going to get back to another live caller. But right now, you can use your touch-tone phone to indicate your response. In the fight against COVID-19, has the government taken the right steps to protect the economy and create jobs? If you approve, press 1. If you disapprove, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, press 3. So again, in the fight against COVID-19, has the government taken the right steps to protect the economy and create jobs? If you approve, press 1. If you disapprove, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, press 3. We now have Shanita, who's a live caller who's joining us with a question for Minister MacLeod. Shanita, welcome.
Yes. Hello, Minister MacLeod.
Hi, Shanita.
Hi. When are the community centres going to be open again in Ontario?
Thanks, Shanita, very much for your question. Obviously, parks, recreation, culture are very important to our government, and we've been working nonstop to support the return to play, the return to recreation. In many cases, we have made the decision, or we have provided guidelines, thanks to the Chief Medical Officer of Health, to reopen recreation facilities to 50 people. On Friday, I made the announcement that our government will be allowing meeting spaces where there is the capacity to have 50 people per room, as long as there is social distancing adhered to. In addition to arenas, we have allowed spectators to go in. That will be up to, however, the decision of the local facility owner, whether that is a private facility like the Sensplex out in Canada, or with the City of Ottawa making those decisions. So we continue to work with them. As the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries on my other job, not just as a local MPP, we have found that in Stage 3, many of the things that needed to be reopened or we're still waiting on approvals ended up within our carriage. And so we continue to work with stakeholders. So in your case, I'm not sure, Shanita, where you're from, if you're living in Nepean or in Jeremy's area. But if I look at some of the areas around our community, whether that's Minto Place or whether that's the Margaret Wyrick Centre or some of the other facilities, that will be up to the municipality. And then there's some other private facilities that will be up to whether or not they've got the capacity. But we certainly are continuing to look at the rigorous standards, high sanitation, physical distancing, in order to make sure that those requirements are met. These have been very tough days, obviously, but we have been making, I think, some pretty good decisions in order to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to limit it. and at the same time allowing for recreational facilities to get back up and running. So it's something that me and my team in particular have been working on throughout the last number of months, and it's been a lot of work, but I think that we have taken the right approach. If I listen to the question just before this to the Premier with respect to education, I think that we have been measured, we've been gradual, and I don't think we have been too aggressive in getting people back, and I think that's been part of the recipe of success that we have had as a province. We have allowed the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and then, of course, locally here, Vera Etches and her team, to determine when and how it will be safe to proceed. And so those processes and procedures have been put in place. So I would say for you, it would likely be that the City of Ottawa will make those determinations and when and if they think they have the ability. And then if it is a private facility, as long as they're adhering to our guidelines, they are safe to open. And we expect, and as the Premier has said many times, we're prepared to allow folks to open when we deem it safe to do so, but it doesn't mean just because we say it's safe to do so that they have to be safe themselves. So I do wish you well, and I know it's been a great summer. The last couple of days here in Ottawa have been pretty cold, and so I know we want to get into the indoor recreational facilities, and we'll continue to monitor the situation as well. But we'll work with our counterparts at the city as well as the private facilities.
Thank you very much for that question. We have another live question coming up now, and it's going to be another question for Minister MacLeod. This one is from George, who's joining us live. George, welcome.
Hello. Actually, for the Premier.
I'm sorry, George. The Premier just texted me. He's off to his next telephone town hall, but if you'd like to share it with me, myself and MPP Roberts will be more than happy to respond.
Okay, yeah, it's a simple question, not with a simple answer, but we've seen 3M opening up in Brockville. We have AMD, Medicom in Montreal getting a $383 million contract to produce N95 masks, but these aren't Canadian companies, they're global companies. And recently, we've seen through experience, global companies seem to, oh, great, we'll make some now, and then, oh, this country we can pay the labor force 23 cents on the hour, no more safety standards, and they disappear. We have jobs for a while. It's still not Canadian made for Canadians by Canadians. Are we going to ever get to the point where we're not going to rely on global companies?
George, that's an excellent question. I know the Premier has been for months, and I think he was pretty clear in his opening remarks in his belief that we need to buy Canadian, we need to support Canadian, and we need to invest in Canadian. And he's certainly done that throughout the last several months as he's been Premier during this pandemic. I know that obviously there is a lot more global liquidity in some of these Canadian companies that are in Ontario. One of the things that we have been doing, and I have been spending a lot of time with Minister Vic Fideli, who is our Minister of Economic Development and Trade, and jobs creation. And we have been really focused on how we can best support those local companies like Ross in Nepean, who has pivoted during this crisis as a global leader, if you can believe it, in film and television production and animation, has really pivoted to support PPE in a COVID-19 environment. So how do we continue to support those companies that are locally owned and operated, but at the same time, those with an imprint in Canada, how do we get them and their production standards? And I won't comment on the facility in Montreal, but let me comment a little bit about Brockville, because as you know, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the MPP, Honourable Steve Clark, is from our neighbouring riding of Leeds and Grenville. And having served in the legislature as long as I have, and alongside first, former Senator and former MPP Bob Renson, and now Minister Clark for over a decade, you got to see the Fortune 500 companies that had invested in Brockville over the years, and over the past decade and a half, those investments started to decline. In fact, many of the Fortune 500 companies left Ontario. What's happening right now, especially with the investment last week with 3M, is showcasing that we can actually bring those companies back and put them back in the production line and create jobs while at the same time protecting Ontario's public health and supporting Ontarians during a time in pandemic. And so over the last number of years, that community has suffered as a result of high energy rates, labor policies that have not been attractive to investment. And I think right now the Premier has been very clear that we want to ensure that companies like 3M and those like Ross locally have that level of support and confidence in their Ontario government that we will keep the jobs here and local. And so that is our goal. I sit on the Jobs and Recovery Committee in Cabinet, which is chaired by our Finance Minister as well as co-chaired by our Economic Development Minister. And we believe that this is the best way to go forward. And as I stated at the top, it's not just manufacturing that is going to lead us into the next economic revolution. I think that if you look at some of the sectors that the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries are responsible for, animation kept going. Some of the best folks that are working for Disney, for example, are educated at Algonquin College. We know that film and television production is increasing in the province of Ontario. Our musicians are world renowned. And so continuing to make strategic investments here will also help us. And that's why earlier on this summer, I invested $1 million as the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries into our city for hyper-local tourism. And I think the big message today is whether or not, you can, pop off and go support something that maybe not be built or made here. We do in our city have an embarrassment of riches where we can actually support local, whether that's film and television, whether that is buying something from 3M, or as simple as supporting Foster's Farm, to buy your local box of produce and that sort of thing. And I think the message that I've tried to instill the entire summer is support hyper local, and the Premier has been trying to encourage people to buy local. So I totally appreciate your question. And I think that it's one that we are obviously concerned and care about. But at the same time, I think the economic benefits and the pride of people, pride of place part of this is literally the fact that we will be manufacturing and we will be creating again in our own province. And we were once a branch plan economy. We aren't now, but at the same time, we are making those creative movements forward. And so I'm excited. I think the Premier is on the right track. And I think that the message of Ontario spirit and Ontario pride of people and pride of place is something that we ought to carry forward and really support.
Lisa, I might just jump on and add something if I can. George, great question. And to give you another fantastic example from the Ottawa Valley of kind of this philosophy and practice, this past week on Tuesday, I was with Minister Fideli, who Minister MacLeod mentioned is our economic development minister. We were in Almont announcing a grant of $450,000 for the dairy distillery in Almont. The dairy distillery typically makes a vodka product from dairy byproducts. And at the onset of the pandemic, they realized that there was a shortage of hand sanitizer in Ottawa at the Queensway Carleton Hospital, which, of course, serve both the constituents of Lisa and my riding. And so they retooled their operation and made over 100,000 liters of hand sanitizer in the last 5 months to serve all of our hospitals in Ottawa. And now with this investment, they're going to be able to triple their production to be able to keep supplying us. So these are the sorts of stories I think are important to highlight and reinforce what Minister MacLeod was just saying and what the Premier was saying about this philosophy of making sure we have that production capacity on site. And we're looking for both the big guys and the little guys like the dairy distillery to step up here.
George, thank you again for that question. We're going to go directly to another live question. This one is from Claire, and it's a question for MPP Roberts. Claire, welcome. You're joining us live.
Yes, hi. being vulnerable, being a senior. I've been going early, doing my shopping early. But lately I've been going later. And I notice, unfortunately, there's more people. I notice that some people, and especially grocery store, which you need to do, right, are not following the rules. And I was wondering, what can be done about that? Should they have a person in charge, make sure that people are following the rule, or what do you think should be done about that?
Thanks so much for the question, Claire. And it's something that I think about a lot. Our riding in Ottawa West Nepean has one of the largest seniors populations in Ontario. In fact, one of the largest seniors populations in Canada. We're only beat out by Victoria. And I think this ultimately comes down to what the Premier was talking about before, which is reinforcing the message to our friends, our coworkers, everybody within our social circles that they need to be making sure that they're wearing a mask when they can't practice proper social distancing, make sure they're using hand sanitizers regularly. And then the big one, of course, is practicing social distancing. And so, we're really encouraging all of our local stores, our grocery stores, all of them that, if our stores want to continue to remain open and welcome customers back, that they need to have those measures in place. And I think we can each do our part to support that by spreading that message, by telling our friends, sharing infographics on social media, forwarding on emails, all of that stuff, and making sure that we're reminding everyone that if we can keep following those three pieces of advice, masks, sanitizer, social distancing, we're going to be able to keep seeing those numbers drop. And so I appreciate your concern and hope that you can help us by making sure that message is getting out to everybody.
Claire, thank you again for that question. Now we're going to do another quick survey question for everyone joining us. You can use your touchtone phone to indicate your response. We want to know, do you have confidence in the government's back-to-school plan? If you agree, press 1. If you disagree, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, press 3. So again, do you have confidence in the government's back-to-school plan? If you agree, press 1. If you disagree, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, press 3. Now, Minister MacLeod, we're actually just about reaching the end of the event. With the last couple of minutes remaining, are there some closing remarks you would like to share with everyone joining us?
Yeah, sure. I'll be brief because I want Jeremy to have a few words, but it's a great honor to be here tonight with MPP Roberts and to have hosted Premier Ford during this pandemic. As I've mentioned, this is my third telephone town hall in the constituency during this pandemic, and had the opportunity to host Premier Ford, Dr. Faulkner, and of course Dr. Etches. And I was pleased today that the Premier laid out our plan as a government for the people so that we could respond to the crisis that we're dealing with. And just really grateful for his time tonight. Many people don't know this, but in the first weeks of the pandemic, we were meeting as a cabinet for 23 hours a week, and just a lot of work. And he still is very happy and chipper and really excited to be out there with the entire province. I just wanted to touch on the announcement that the Premier did make today in Brockville to expand to build a new correctional facility in Kemptville. That would be great news, by the way, for the people of Barrhaven and Nepean as the largest urban centre to Kemptville. I believe that's going to create lots of jobs and opportunities for our folks. And I was very pleased that the Premier reiterated his support for Barnsdale ramp at the 416, as well as to work with Freer Continuing Care so that we could have a long-term care facility in Barrhaven. And I know Jeremy will want to talk a little bit more about his work with Algonquin College, but I think that's great. And if I could just leave on this parting note, for those who may need to contact my office, obviously our number one priority is you. And we are now back at the office full time. We did take some time during the middle of the pandemic to ensure the safety of our staff. We are by appointment now, but you can always call 613-823-2116. Again, that's 613-823-2116. And we're happy to assist you, whether it is a healthcare issue, an education issue, or anything in between. If we can be there for you, I know that Tricia and Larry, who answer the phones, will be more than happy to help. And then just finally, let me say this in my other hat in the government, is encouraging people to support that hyperlocal. When I talk about Foster Spire more, I talk about some of the neat things that we're doing in this community. I think if we can continue to support folks right now, the next year or two may be pretty difficult, but as long as we're together and we're continuing to support one another, we're going to do just fine. And Ontario will emerge, in my view, as a global competitor. We will emerge as the place people will want to come back to invest and also to visit in the years ahead. But right now, we need to focus on supporting one another and building this province back up in the midst of this pandemic. So if I may, James and Eric, who moderated and looked after this today, thank you. I want to say thank you to Premier Ford for taking the time with us, and obviously my colleague from Ottawa West Nepean, MPP Roberts, for his time and dedication tonight. So I'll turn that over to you, MPP Roberts, and you can take her home.
Well, thank you so much, Minister. It's been great to co-host this with you. And again, as you said, thank you to the Premier and to the entire team, Eric and James, who put this together today. It's been fantastic to hear directly from folks, and I really look forward to hearing the feedback that we get on some of these survey questions that were asked tonight. You know, as I mentioned at the top, I'm going to be continuing to focus over the next couple of months as we head into the fall on those three main areas, which is supporting our businesses as best we can. Going to be continuing, for those of you that follow me on social media, I've been all over the riding lately, visiting some of our restaurants and small businesses, seeing that they're making sure they're following those social distancing protocols and mandatory mask rules, all of that. We're going to keep focused on that. We're going to keep focused on supporting our vulnerable populations, and we're also going to keep focused on supporting our seniors in this area. And as both Minister MacLeod and the Premier mentioned, I was thrilled today to be able to speak to the Premier about an exciting project that's being developed at Algonquin College to build a campus of care right at Algonquin College, where they can be looking to train PSWs on site, figure out best practices for them, figure out how we can use technology and innovation to support our seniors in long-term care facilities. And so this project, we're still a long ways away. We're still working on it and coming up with all of the different pieces that we need. But I think this is going to be a great project for our riding and for our region. I'll just end on a story. You know, I think this pandemic has impacted each and every one of us in different and unique ways. For my family, we have been unable to visit my younger brother, Dylan, who lives in a group home in Ottawa. We haven't been able to see him for a number of months. We've been dropping off baked goods on the front porch of the group home. But this past week, for the first time, the group home opened for some visitors under strict rules and strict guidelines, and my mom was able to get in there and give him a big hug on behalf of everyone in the family, and that's thanks to each and every one of you. Each and every one of you taking the time to follow social distancing, use hand sanitizer, wear masks, do your part. That's allowing us to get back to normal and hopefully allowing each of you to get back to seeing some of your loved ones and having some experiences like my family is having right now with Dylan and being able to see him again. So again, thank you to all of you for what you're doing. My office remains at your disposal. Please don't hesitate to give us a call, send us an email, connect with us on Zoom or on social media. We look forward to continuing to work with you and make sure we emerge from this pandemic as strong as ever. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening. If you still have any questions or feedback on today's virtual town hall, I want to remind you that you can share them with Premier Ford by emailing his office at doug.fordco@pc.ola.org. Again, please email your questions and feedback to Premier Ford and his team at doug.fordco@pc.ola.org. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and take care.